You've heard of the opioid crisis? We all have, but in case you missed the details, it went something like this. In the 90s, Purdue Pharma created the drug Oxycontin for treating pain. You know what treats pain really well? Heroin. They basically created legal heroin in a pill form and had the nerve to aggressively market it as safe and non-habit forming. Oxy hit the legal and black markets hard because at the time, doctors didn't know how dangerous it was, and Purdue grossly misled everyone into thinking it was the humane thing to do for people who experienced pain. Excesses were prescribed, and guess what? People really liked it and kept going back for more. It was a pleasure buzzing in your brain of overwhelming euphoria. It was glorious. As use of the drug went up, so did overdose-related deaths, and the country cracked down on Oxy from all angles. As supply diminished, users didn't simply stop using. They had to switch to other avenues for their high and turn to actual heroin and fentanyl. The drug cartels were thrilled to fill that vacuum, and the unregulated drugs they provided were even more dangerous than Oxy. A close friend once told me, I am the poster child for the opioid crisis, and it struck me. She was right. I was going to college in the early 2000s in rich, white Orange County, which in my estimate was the epicenter of the great opioid crisis. Like all addicts, I started using recreational. I felt rebellious, and it was fun. No withdrawals or consequences, just fun once in a while. But as life happened and sources became available, my use increased. I slowly crossed that line into the darkness of addiction. I spent every cent I had on Oxy. The first time I felt withdrawal, I didn't even realize what was happening. I thought I had the flu. When it dawned on me why I was sick and bedridden, I knew everything had changed. That pill went from a joyous occasion to a soul-crushing weight I carried with me everywhere I went. My days were spent either high, seeking more pills, or sick because I couldn't acquire them. I would take cash advances on my credit cards in order to get a stash when I had no money, even though I really needed things like laundry detergent or food. I'd say, this is for sure, without a doubt, the very last time I'm going to do a pill. So it's okay, because this is the last time. That same inner dialogue happened every few days. I actually believed it would be the last time every time I got more. On the drive to my dealer's house, I would talk to myself, don't go, turn this car around, use the money for stuff you actually need. But I never mustered up the willpower to turn around. The dealer would get in, we'd exchange quick pleasantries and do the deal. The trade was simple. He would give me 4 to 10 pills at $20 a pop, and I would give him every last dollar I had and a small piece of my soul. It went on like this until I had given him more of myself than I could afford. This was no way to live. I realized being in Orange County was not good for me because the only source I knew of for Oxy lived a few minutes away, so I moved back to San Diego. Here I had no source, and I was happy again. It was a glorious time because it felt like I had won the war. I didn't go to rehab, I didn't die, and I had finally gotten out from under that weight. I wish I could say the end here, curtain down, applause, and go home, but of course it had to get worse before it could get better. My addiction, that demon that I thought I had beaten, reared its ugly head once again in the worst way possible when I discovered Tijuana. Tijuana. I'd been off pills for over a year when an acquaintance of mine had told me you could get Oxy down there. I still don't know why, but one day, a day that was unextraordinary in every way, just for the heck of it, I went on an illegal drug-finding mission to Tijuana, all by myself. I parked, walked across the border, found the restaurant he had told me about, and ordered a beer and 10 Oxys from the server. The beer was delivered, and my heart was racing as I sipped on it and waited. I tried to play it cool, but under my dark sunglasses, my eyes were scanning for threats. Cops, narcs, evil cartel men who would snatch me up and hold me for ransom. The waiter brought me 10 pills wrapped in a napkin. They looked good to me, so I handed him the $200 and asked if there was somewhere I could do one. He directed me to the bathroom, where I snorted it off the screen of my phone. I left a tip for my beer and headed out. Piece of cake. But now I had to cross the border into the United fucking States of America. Certainly, this was going to take a criminal mastermind to pull off. Like all professional drug smugglers, I put the drugs in my shoe and headed for the borderline, trying not to seem suspicious as a high, tattooed 27-year-old white woman crossing the border all by herself. I got the story straight in my mind. I had come down to see a dentist. Yes, sir, and no, I have nothing to declare. As I approached the kiosk, I saw a drug dog just up ahead. I smiled at the pup as it smelled my shoes. This was it. My one time doing this, and this was it. I'm going to jail. The dog kept moving without a single thought in the world about me. That's how I learned that drug dogs don't detect prescription drugs. If they did, they'd be stopping anyone with Advil in their pocket. The agent took my passport, asked her usual questions in that cold monotone born out of the boredom and resentment of daily repetitious labor, was satisfied with my answers, and I was on my way. Surprisingly, I found cartel drug dealers to be more friendly than U.S. border agents. Finding out the ease of the process was the worst possible outcome because once again I had a source and only my willpower could stand between me and the drug. Next, I learned that riding my Harley was the way to go because you can cut to the front of the line, and now crossing the border only took about 20 minutes. It just got easier to access, and as my use went up, my willpower went down. In TJ, the best place to get your drug of choice was in a fake pharmacy. You could tell it was fake because their shelves were stocked with things like a single roll of TP, a half-used tube of toothpaste, 3 bags of chips, and expired condoms, all of which were covered in dust. But this was the place to go because they also had a back room where customers could consume their chosen poison. It was safe back there. Well, safer than you'd imagine, at least. They knew that for Americans to come down, it needed to be a comfortable buying experience. I mean, it's no Lexus dealership, but I never felt threatened. One trip down, I brought home more than just my supply. I rode down, bought my pills, and went in the back room to snort one. The only other person in the room was bent over in semi-consciousness. It's referred to as nodding off, and just means someone took a heavy dose of heroin and was enjoying being in another world for a while. I was snorting my pill when out of the corner of my eye I saw a tiny puppy come out of the backpack of Mr. Nod-Off. Don't look at it. Don't you dare even look, Christie. There is nothing you can do. I didn't mean to judge, but it appeared that any money this guy was getting was going into that needle in his arm and not for dog food or vaccines. The pup was completely unattended and at high risk for wandering out onto the streets of TJ. So I defied myself, and with broken resolution, I did more than look at the puppy. I picked the little motherfucker up and stuffed it into my vest. Hey, buddy, what are you doing with this puppy? You want to sell it to me? The guy swiveled a bit and mumbled some nonsense, but couldn't respond or even lift his head. I wanted to rescue this puppy, but I was on a motorcycle. What would I do? What would I say to the border agent? Do you have to declare a puppy? Before I even had time to consider what was being done, I was on my way out the door. That puppy didn't move as I started my motorcycle or while I maneuvered to the front of the borderline. I decided to keep quiet and hoped they wouldn't notice my third boob. When asked if I had anything to declare, I said, honestly, I don't think so. It worked. I was on my way, but now I still had 15 freeway miles to home and a tiny puppy tucked precariously in my vest. It's like that puppy knew if she could just stay still through 65-mile-per-hour winds on the freeway, I would take her to a better life. I'll be damned if that puppy didn't sit perfectly still the entire 20-minute ride home. I gave her a meal and a bath and found her a... I found her a good home where she lives happily to this day. Over Over the years, my use of Oxy fluctuated, but as the country cracked down on the opioid crisis, it became harder to get, even in TJ. The dealers were forced to switch to a drug 100 times stronger than heroin, fentanyl. They make it look just like the Oxy, and if you aren't aware, they sell it to you and tell you it is Oxy. So you do the normal dose that you know you can handle, only this time your body doesn't take so well to it. You feel strange, sick, concerned. My breathing slowed. I was drenched in sweat and felt hot and cold at once. I stumbled into my bathroom, and after violently vomiting in the toilet, I collapsed on the floor. I couldn't open my eyes, and every breath was a strain. This is it, I thought. I'm becoming the statistic I feared the most, another overdose on the bathroom floor. I wondered who would find my body there. I stopped struggling to take breaths and finally gave in to the deep sleep the drug took me to. It was my turn to nod off. When I became conscious sometime later that afternoon, I got up from the bathroom floor, thought, that was close, then proceeded to snort a smaller dose of my next pill. It sounds insane, I know, because addiction is one of the truest forms of insanity. I knew I needed to stop, and instead of seeking professional help, I thought I could beat this by removing the source again. I came up with grand schemes to put up barriers between myself and the drug. The border wall, yes, Trump, the wall that's down there did not stop me from bringing in drugs. No one could stop me. My schemes were my only hope. First, I tried destroying my passport. I couldn't cross the border without one, and if I couldn't get into Mexico, problem solved. That worked until I told a friend what I had done and why I had done it, and the genius responded with, "You don't even need a passport to cross." Thanks, guy, idiot. Now I just cross without a passport every time. So next I tried having my friend keep my ID. That worked until one day when I just didn't give a shit and crossed with zero identification. I handled their questions in secondary like a fucking boss and was on my way, high as a kite. Convinced I could still beat this the easy way, I came up with an even more bold scheme. I bought my usual stash and asked if he wouldn't mind fronting me a few extra pills if I would come back and pay him the next day. I stayed away for months, convinced that if I ever showed my face down there again, I would be hurt or even killed for having ripped a cartel drug dealer off. I felt guilt for doing it, but it was worth it to end my addiction, and fuck, I'd been paying their mortgages for years, so what the heck, right? That worked until a day when I didn't like whatever emotion I was feeling, and I started driving south. In tears, I called a friend to let someone know where I was going, so if I turned up missing, they would know where to start looking. If that phone call doesn't demonstrate the overwhelming power of addiction, nothing does. I'd been away for months, had ripped him off, and when I walked up to my dealer, he greeted me with a big smile and a hug. A fucking hug. Fuck me. I was so fucked. Nothing I tried worked. None of my grand schemes. It was time for something new. It was time for me to step up and face my biggest demon, myself. In my battle with addiction, I kept hoping for and trying to create some outside motivator that would make me stop. I wanted to get caught by Border Patrol or for my dealer to stop selling to me. Part of me wanted to OD to end it all. I wanted any way out that didn't mean I had to look at the only place that truly scared me, inside myself. I had to relearn how to cope with tough emotions on my own without suppressing them. For me, getting off pills didn't mean rehab or a support group or years of therapy or yoga or moving away from my source. For once, I realized it didn't need to be an outside force. It needed to be a personal journey to find a way to love myself enough to stop. The pills started out all fun and games, and getting high felt really, really good, but I had gone too far. I had lost my freedom to the drug. I had to learn that drugs tell lies, lies I actively participated in believing. I let them convince me that I was justified in my addiction, that I was having fun, that it was safe because I was a pro, that this would really be the last time, or that these were my choices and I wasn't hurting anyone else. It was all lies. The truth is, I was hurting myself, and I was hurting anyone who cared about me. To anyone in this room who had to worry about me, I'm sorry. I wish I had alleviated your worry sooner. I never went back that day my dealer gave me a hug. That hug was part of the lies, all the bullshit I'd been telling myself. He didn't hug me because he cared about me. He did it because when he looked at me, he saw dollar signs. It was all fake, shallow, cheap, all of it. I was done using schemes to stay clean, and I was done believing my own lies. And now the source remains, just a 15-minute motorcycle ride away, and that's okay. It no longer lures me anymore because I took my life back. I made a choice to finally be free again, and since then my resolve has only strengthened. I have woken up every single day and continued to make the same choice, to embrace those emotions I had avoided for so long, to feel even when it's hard, and to finally love myself enough to stop the self-destruction.
That was VAMP first timer, Christie Naill.